We're going to kick off today with a speaker who is an inspirational patient storyteller. His name is Michael Brovac. Michael will tell us about experiences he had growing up. I had the pleasure of talking with him prior, a little bit earlier today about what he went through. But he grew up with a very rare immunodeficiency. And now he's leveraged what could have been a disability into a source of empowerment and achievement. So would you all join me in welcoming Michael Brovac? Hey.
Test. Amazing. Okay. Everyone can hear me all right? Phenomenal. So, I'm just gonna put the PowerPoint on. So first and foremost, I just want to take the time and thank every single person who is here this morning on behalf of myself, on behalf of Immunity Canada. Thank you for coming out and hearing what I have to say and what we all represent today. My name is Michael Brovac. I'm an inspirational speaker, holistic life coach, personal trainer, player development basketball coach, and entrepreneur. But today I stand here as your patient speaker. Something that a lot of my life I walked around with on my back every day. And the question I want to ask every single one of you guys and just ponder on it is, to you, what is a patient? To me, a patient is someone who wakes up every day not knowing if they're going to be here tomorrow. A patient is someone who feels disconnected, alone, depressed, anxious, with the fact that they can't relate to the majority of people around them. And especially the fact, when you're young and you're taught from a very young age that the likelihood of you surviving past your diagnosis is very, very slim. And so when I was born, I was diagnosed with a very, very rare form of immune deficiency. This immune deficiency was called IPEC syndrome. And so me and my brother Cameron were actually 2 out of 50 cases worldwide when this happened. And when this happened, our life was based around just surviving. Our existence consisted of either being in a hospital room, connected to machines, or at home, being monitored by nurses and doctors, whether my brother and I were going to wake up tomorrow. And with this lifestyle, with this continuous of challenge and struggle that we faced, me and my brother Cameron had each other. We were always together. If he was in the hospital, I was right beside him. And if I was in the hospital, he was right beside me. And so when I think about being a patient, when I think about what that means to me, that means feeling disconnected, not belonged. And so sadly, when I was 15 years old and my brother was 10 years old, Cameron passed away. When my little brother Cameron passed away, I didn't believe I could be anything other than what he lived up. I saw my only teammate, the person I related to the most, pass away right in front of me. And as you can see in all these photos, we were extremely close. Very, very close. And when he passed away, I gave up. I said to myself, what is the point of living? Why do I carry this label as a patient when my only teammate who is also a patient is no longer here? And so I quit. I didn't tell anyone. I felt ashamed. I felt insecure. I felt disconnected. And as all my peers and everyone around me was talking about going to this university, going to this college, experiencing these things in their youth, their teenage years, my stories will always all around, well, I gotta get treatment, or I gotta go see this expert. Or you know what, my brother just passed away a week ago, so now I gotta go back into the same hospital and get more treatment for my problems. And so what kept on happening was, when I accepted the fact that my brother was no longer here, I neglected myself. I stopped eating. I stopped drinking. I didn't care to exist. So why am I going to put any effort into what I need to do when really all I care for is just being with my brother? And so by the time I was 18 years old, I was on 30 medications day and night. My kidneys were failing. I had nephrotic syndrome, so medical experts would know what that is. For those who don't, I was retaining fluid. I wasn't able to filter properly what your kidneys are supposed to do, so I would retain fluid and not be able to properly exist. And on top of that, the deepest demon I faced was this identity and this connection I had to being a patient. I didn't want to be here. So while everyone was looking at me as this heroic patient who was going through these treatments, who was inspirational because he's still here while his brother's alive or not alive, I didn't want to be here. And so I was approached by my experts and my doctors who took care of me. And they said that at the time, I was 18 years old, that the only way of me being able to overcome what I was going through would be through what's called a bone marrow transplant, a stem cell transplant. And so as we're all here for immune deficiency, everyone who has that, everyone who's been a part of that thing would understand what that is. For those who don't, basically what that would replicate is I would need a donor, and I would need to basically replace my immune system cells in the hope of positive transformation from the donor cells. Now, the thing that I want to make very clear, though, is still I had a belief, and I told myself that I was a patient. I don't want to be here. So when I was told that I needed a transplant, and then on top of that, because of my neglection of myself, my kidneys were failing, my liver was failing, and my lungs had pneumonia, there was no point of going through it. But I did it because I didn't want my family and my loved ones and the people who cared about me to bear the fact that their son or their nephew or their friend wasn't here as well. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to do it. And so my aunt chose to make this GoFundMe page. And when she made this GoFundMe page, she wrote a very, very well-described description of me and my brother's up-to-date situation. My brother passing, needing all this extra help for support, financially, emotionally, spiritually. And someone very, very special saw it. And so within this time, I was just prepping to go through the procedure, go through what I wanted to be, hearing what was gonna cause the next couple steps. And someone very special saw this page. This individual's name was Christian. And so 48 hours before I was gonna be going into this procedure, where, of course, as you guys know, I was really scared and I didn't think I was gonna be here, this individual knocks on my door. I had no idea who he was. I didn't know where he came from. And my parents welcome him in. And I'm kind of confused because this guy just has a video camera. He's kind of dressed up a little bit casual. You know, he doesn't seem to strike me as someone that's like, whoa, who is this guy? I was just like, okay, cool. He walks in my living room door. He has a video camera. And he puts it on my dinner table. And before telling me his name, telling me why he was here, all he told me was, have you ever thought about killing yourself? And I couldn't stop crying. And the reason why I couldn't stop crying was because this random stranger, who I had no idea who they were, had just confronted my biggest fear, my biggest insecurity, when all my life, all I wanted to do was show up. I just wanted to be here to represent my family. I just wanted to be here to represent my brother. But yet he was gone. And so as I was in this state of contemplating my own life, this random individual just called out my darkest fear. And so what happened was that created an opening. That created some sort of, oh my God, I can trust you. And so we continued to talk, and he's like, you know, Mike, what do you aspire to do? Well, you know, I love basketball, but I can't play because I have arthritis in every single joint of my body. And, you know, I'm 4'10", and I have all these medications and all these things, and I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. And he said, okay, but what if you could? I said, well, that would be cool. He's like, okay, well, I got a surprise for you. We get in the car and we take an Uber from my home in Hamilton all the way to Scotiabank Arena. And everyone in here, of course, knows the Toronto Raptors. I'm hoping all of you are fans. And we show up at this sports bar, and who's in there? My aunt, my wonderful other Aunt Betty, and my Uncle Ron. And they're like, hey, surprise. And my parents are right beside me. And I'm like, you guys knew about all of this? You guys knew this was gonna happen? And so we had a beautiful dinner. And then he was like, okay, we gotta go. Like, what do you mean we gotta go? We just came from Hamilton. He's like, we gotta go. Next thing I know, I was walking courtside down to the Toronto Raptors game. And I have my best friend, one of my best friends, Jordan Kilgannon, who, if you don't know, he's the famous blue-haired dunker who's been on Sportsnet and all this, do the halftime show. He points at me and he says, hey man, I want you to come on the court. And he jumps over at the Toronto halftime show. This was all in the span of 48 hours. And so what this showed me and what this taught me was that, oh man, even though I feel like my existence really sucks right now, there's some hope. There's some future. There's something that can motivate me or keep me around today because I can enjoy myself. But the thing that was still hanging on to me was in my head, I didn't want to be here because I knew the next day I woke up, I didn't know if I would be able to see my family again. I didn't know if I would be able to see my mentor again. I didn't know if I could say hello to my friends again. Because guess what? The reality was I didn't want to be here still. Because I still didn't believe that I was more than being a patient. And so as I stand up here as your patient speaker, ironically, my whole past was dedicated to being a patient, to now, in the present, being a speaker. My mentor pointed something out to me when I was in the transplant. And so there was a time where anyone who has ever gone through, different types of immune deficiency disorders or in the hospital generally, there's always complications. You can never guarantee that it's going to be successful right out the gate. And so it was about a week before Christmas, and still at this time I was taking chemotherapy. I was still planning to try to push through this procedure, but I still didn't believe, I still didn't think that I could be something more than what I was. But the thing that held on to me was that I didn't want to have my parents bear the pain of losing another son. And I didn't want my friends or my family or my peers to say, yeah, you know what, Michael also passed away from IPEC syndrome. And so my mentor saw me, and what he said to me forever changed my life. He said, Mike, you are more than a kid in a hospital bed. And when I heard these words, something in my brain and in my heart changed forever. And something that was really interesting is 48 minutes before this, I had just been told, because of complications during transplant, that I had lymphoma growing on my neck. And I would need to get into surgery ASAP, or else the next day I would be gone. Ironically, the same message I'm trying to convey to all of you. And he said to me, the moment I was told that, because I got very emotional, I started screaming. And I looked up and I said, why Cam? Why God? Why me? And you know what my mentor said? He said, how dare you? He said, how dare you throw your brother and God under the bus? You should be doing something to make them proud. You need to understand that you're more than your circumstance. And instead of giving him something to worry about you for, make him smile. And when I heard these words, and when this kept on being put in my face, he would text me, remind me, Mike, what are you doing? Are you making sure you're walking? Mike, are you drinking your water? Hey, Mike, guess what? In 2 months from now, I need you to come out with me and Jordan because we got to do a dunk session. He kept on encouraging me towards my purpose, my dream. And if you see right here, to the left of me in the third photo is Christian. In the middle at the free throw line, that's me. That was me 2 months after my transplant. Still on chemotherapy, could barely walk, could barely talk, but I was there and I was trying because I believed that I was more than my circumstance. And right beside me was my father. And you can see through all of these photos manifesting from the purpose that created the motivation to be something different than just a patient. And so finally, when I heard my mentor call out my darkest and most fearful truth, basically say how cowardly I was living my life, something forever changed. And so now, being who I am, 5 years later, I am a coach for a professional basketball team, where I am a mentor and I help professional athletes on a day-to-day basis achieve their dreams. I am a speaker and a rapper who performs in schools, who motivates kids to recognize that they are more than their circumstance. They're more than whatever they have been told that they are in that moment. And now every day I get to represent my brother Cam through my brand Camo, where our mission is to help kids in hospitals who suffer from a lack of connection and belonging, create depression. Because I needed to know that I could belong. I needed to know that I could live, and I needed to know that I was something more than my circumstance. And so my goal and my hope for my presentation today, and seeing me speak and hearing what I have to say, is that if you are a medical professional, if you are a patient, if you are a regular civilian, if you are someone who isn't even exposed to the hospital, understand what potential and motivation you have and how much power your words have over someone. All it took for me was to hear one time that I was more than a hospital. I was more than a patient. I was more than a sick kid. It took me to recognize that I had a purpose and a mission because my brother was not here beside me, but I was still breathing somehow when I shouldn't be. And so everyone in this room, all I ask is that the next time you walk into a hospital, or you help your client, you help your patient, or you take your procedure, your medications, your treatment, whatever you have to do to get through your circumstance, ask yourself why. Why am I doing this? And then ask yourself, what do I want? Thank you very much.